Hello and welcome to the Friday, October 3rd, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich, recording today from Jacksonville, Florida. And this episode is brought to you by the SANS.edu undergraduate certificate program in cybersecurity fundamentals. Well, and today, once more, I wrote about the .well-known directory. Of course, have written about this in the past. Most recently, I think it was last week, about some backdoors and such, some web shells that people left behind in that directory. Today, it's a little bit different. Actually, no honeypot data for a change, but instead something I observed on our ISC web server. And that is that attackers are scanning for URLs in the .well-known directory that are valuable for reconnaissance. There are a number of systems that add configuration files to the .well-known directory, like, for example, the terraform.json file that will give an attacker, of course, some hints as to what APIs your particular system supports. Some of them are required, like that terraform.json file, in order to use these tools effectively. Also, these OAuth and OpenID configuration files are required if you would like to use these systems. Insofar, it's not a good idea to remove those files from your system in case you see them on your system. Sometimes they're not even files, they're just APIs themselves that create those responses dynamically. So what you want to do is you want to at least keep an eye on these locations and make sure that what's being published here is supposed to be published. I think it was yesterday, or at least earlier this week, where we had one case where one of these files did include some secret keys, some API secrets, not just the public keys that are usually supposed to be listed in those files. For example, the OAuth and OpenID configuration. So double check, make sure nothing there that's not supposed to be there. But overall, this is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, well, a way how attackers can abuse these features against you for reconnaissance. And then we have a couple end-of-the-week vulnerabilities to talk about. First of all, RedHat released advisory warning of privilege escalation vulnerability in the RedHat Openshift AI service. A user with minimal credentials, meaning anybody who can run a Jupyter notebook on the system, is able to basically get full admin access to the entire cluster. So this is something that you want to address. I doubt it's super critical, depending on who you give access to this OpenShift AI service. But overall, securing Jupyter notebooks is always a little bit tricky because, well, you are running code sort of by definition on the system, and a badly configured role like this, is likely easily exploited. And Paloalto released an advisory regarding 3 recently patched vulnerabilities in the TOTOLINK X6000R router. This particular manufacturer has had similar vulnerabilities in the past, like pretty much any router manufacturer like this. So patches have been released in June, but with this advisory out here now, you definitely must patch, in particular because one of the critical vulnerabilities here does allow an unauthenticated command injection, and exploitation for these vulnerabilities is pretty trivial, as explained in this advisory. So there are some source code snippets here explaining the exact nature of these vulnerabilities. There's no proof of concept per se here in the advisory, but yes, exploitation is not difficult. And talking about routers, we also got updates from Draytek for their DrayOS routers, also known under the name Vigor. The single vulnerability being addressed here sounds like a buffer overflow. It's not really clear. It's just as memory corruption here, but it does also say that it does allow arbitrary code execution without authentication. One of the mitigating issues they're covering here, and that's certainly an important one, is that you really shouldn't expose any web admin interface like this to the public eyes because, well, they tend to be horribly broken and vulnerable. Well, and I got one more item, something with a little bit more positive note to not let you hanging here just with vulnerabilities for the weekend. Microsoft announced that they're in the process to no longer display SVG images inline in emails in Outlook and Outlook 365. They started this process mid-September and should be finished with it mid-October. I can't get to the original announcement that Microsoft published, so I'll link to the Bleeping Computer article about this, but they have a pretty good summary of it. Of course, these SVG images have recently been heavily used for malware and for phishing and a couple of other circumstances, so that's probably why they're starting to block them now, like they already are blocking a lot of other attachments. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for liking this podcast. Next week, I'll be in Denver teaching a class following our Cloud Summit. And by the way, I only have one more public class to teach first week of December in Dallas. So if you're interested in learning more about web application security, that's the week for you to sign up. And as always, any future classes I'll teach are listed in the show notes on the page on the Internet Storm Center website. Just below the actual show notes, you'll see a short list of upcoming classes. Thanks, and talk to you again on Monday. Bye.